Sold by her stepmother at just 17, she discovered an incredible secret that transformed her life. The sunless sky mirrored the weight inside Grace's chest as she stood in the high-end kitchen, boots scraping against the polished floor. Each corner of this mansion felt like a prison, filled to the brim with objects that glimmered with wealth but dulled her spirit. Her stepmother's cruel laughter echoed in the hallways, a reminder that home was only hollow stone and ornate walls. Grace gritted her teeth, a tightness creeping into her muscles. Just weeks ago, she had been a girl, daring to dream, nurturing the flicker of her mother's spirit through art. Now, she was barely a shadow of herself intended to scrub and serve, not to create or feel. As the alluring scent of cooking wafted through the air, a bitter tang stirred in her stomach. Each meal she prepared, crafted with precision for a life she was not a part of, betrayed her own existence. How could she at just 17 be sold into servitude? She clenched her fists, thoughts racing. Would her mother have really wanted this? Was this the legacy left behind? And yet, the surge of rebellion nestled within her, igniting her heart, urging her to remember the teachings lost amongst her grief. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. Days bled together, each filled with insidious whispers that chipped away at her confidence. Grace felt like a ghost drifting through opulent rooms, cleaning away remnants of their charmed lives while longing to reclaim her own. It felt wrong, so wrong, that beneath this gilded veneer lay secrets and shadows. Then, in a moment of desperation, she stumbled upon the attic, a forgotten world harboring dust and memories laden with weight. With shaking hands, she opened a trunk and gasped. There they were, her mother's paintings, vibrant yet trapped beneath layers of dust and neglect. Each brushstroke told stories she never knew, struggles and beauty hungered for recognition. Grace's breath quickened, realization washing over her like a tidal wave. These weren't just art, they were her mother's triumphs, silenced by society's prejudice against women artists. The revelation filled her heart with warmth, igniting an undeniable urge to bring the colors back into her life, yet, lurking in the shadows was her stepmother, a looming threat. Grace's heartbeat quickened as she pieced together her plans, torn between fear and an unquenchable desire. Opportunity lingered, but it came with peril, a local art contest offering a chance to honor her mother. The whispers of doubt bubbled fiercely within her. What if she failed? What if her stepmother found out and sabotaged her efforts? The weight of the past, her mother's legacy, pressed heavily on her shoulders. Grace was caught in a storm within, grappling with uncertainty and aching determination. Time slipped through her fingers like grains of sand, and she stood on the precipice of her own fate, seeking to bring to light truths that could either uplift or destroy her. A letter lay unopened on her desk, a message that might shift the balance of her world. As she touched its edges, her resolve trembled. Would fear bind her, or would she uncover the strength buried deep inside? The questioning haunted her as she faced the choices ahead, aware that each stroke on the canvas would define her destiny. The weight of the letter tugged at Grace's conscience, a promise and a threat intertwined. It beckoned her but also warned her of the storm it could unleash. She hesitated. Would opening it mean taking a step toward freedom or inviting disaster? In her heart, a battle raged, fear whiplashing against the flicker of hope. A quiet resolve showcased itself like an unseen sun attempting to pierce through overcast skies. She grasped the set of keys dangling from her waist, each one representing a door to a potential future. With steady hands, she tore the envelope, the paper whispering secrets as it yielded its contents. Inside was an acceptance letter addressed to her. A local gallery opening was inviting her to exhibit her mother's artwork instead of her own. Shock coursed through her veins, spilling into a torrent of emotions she had long shackled away. Would she dare to step forward, fighting for the legacy of the mother whose presence had always inspired her? Tremors of excitement battled with the shadows of doubt, each pulse echoed loud in her ears. How could she, with no money and no support, hope to mount a successful exhibition? Didn't her stepmother's sneers say it all? Distraction pulled her back. Could her stepmother wield her connection to sabotage her attempt at reclaiming familial history? Shivers cascaded down her spine as possibilities whirled around her like autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind. She envisioned the opening night, her mother's art quietly demanding a spot in the world, standing unopposed against the negativity that had often defined her existence. But then the very real fear of failure gripped her tightened chest. Would she have the courage to face scrutiny? To share not only her work but the very essence of her mother's enduring spirit? In the dimly lit kitchen, her pulse quickened. She sought solitude away from the prying eyes of wealth that surrounded her. Slipping into the attic once more, she marveled at the canvas stoutly standing against the wall, the colors begging to breathe again. With swift, calculated strokes of memory, she traced the contours of her mother's spirit, determined, fierce, and unyielding. These paintings were more than art, they were a reminder that creativity could outwit cruelty. Yet the specter of her stepmother loomed, a persistent reminder of her control. Grace had seen the inescapable grip wielded by her stepmother, how her social status dictated their lives. She also knew, deep within her, that unearthing her mother's identity could jeopardize her position. The battle between the desire to honor the past and the need to embrace her future raged on. As the shadows deepened, she gathered the courage to paint again, letting the brush glide across the canvas like a whisper. Each stroke became a small act of rebellion, a rejection against a life dictated by someone else's desires. With every color applied, she found a piece of her voice returning, lacing her heart with a newfound determination that pulsed like a heartbeat. The contest loomed, and Grace felt both exhilaration and dread. Would she risk all for art? Could she stand up against the unyielding force of her stepmother's disdain? Would she emerge as not just a servant but as an artist, a beacon for creativity that defied her circumstances? The ticking clock reminded her that time waits for no one. Joel's voice echoed in her mind. The will of an artist was never easily defeated. She stood before the canvas, her resolve crystallizing, her mother's legacy urging her onward, but just as the world beckoned with ultimate possibility, footsteps echoed down the hallway. The door to the attic creaked open, and in walked her stepmother, eyes gleaming with suspicion. "What do you think you're doing, Grace?" The sharpness of the question hung in the air. It was time. Would Grace defend her newfound voice, or would she retreat? The moment of truth was upon her, a choice looming larger than the house that confined her. Grace's heart raced, caught between the heavy weight of her stepmother's piercing gaze and her fierce determination to reclaim her identity. The attic felt suddenly smaller, the once inspiring walls closing in as anticipation and dread flashed through her mind. This was no longer just about art, it was about breaking free from a life of silence and subservience. "I was just organizing," she stammered, words tumbling out awkwardly like out-of-tune notes in a symphony. The smooth surface of the canvas mocked her hesitation, each color a reminder of her true purpose that now hung delicately in the balance. "Organizing? Or plotting?" her stepmother shot back, her voice sharp like a freshly honed blade. "You think I didn't notice your little outings? This gallery nonsense? You're certainly not worthy of that kind of attention." Each word pierced Grace deeper than the last. How could someone she shared the same roof with deny her so profoundly? Taking a breath, she recalled the power of her mother's artistry, their shared connection through paint and canvas. The thought ignited a flicker of rebellion within her. "Actually, I was invited to exhibit my mother's work," Grace replied, newfound steel lacing her tone. "It's not nonsense. It's part of who I am." Her stepmother's expression shifted, a mix of disbelief and fury sweeping across her face. "Your mother's work?" The scoff that erupted sounded more like a weapon than a response. "That old drivel? It's nothing but a relic of a bygone era. No one cares about the past, Grace. Not in this world. I do, she shot back, her voice gaining strength. And maybe I'm tired of living in the shadows of your expectations. The moment felt electrifying, a pivot that might alter the course of her life. This was not just a confrontation, it was an unveiling. You want to hurt me? Over a paintbrush, the stepmother's voice cracked, revealing a hint of vulnerability. I want to honor her, Grace said, conviction flooding her words. It's time I define myself, not through your opinions, but through my choices. The silence that stretched between them felt charged with unbridled energy as her stepmother processed the challenge, eyes narrowing in suspicion. Perhaps for the first time, she saw Grace not as a helpless girl but as a determined woman ready to reclaim her narrative. That realization sent a thrill down Grace's spine. She had emerged from the shadows, ready to fight for her future, and she would stand firm no matter the cost. You may think your social status gives you control, Grace continued, feeling emboldened, but my mother's legacy is my power now. I will create, and you can't take that from me. The air thickened with tension, both women locked in a battle of wills. It was no longer just an internal conflict, it was also a confrontation of identities that neither could afford to lose. Grace stepped boldly forward, closing the distance between them. Her stepmother flinched at the sudden audacity of her posture. You think you can start a career in the art world? You'll need money, connections, and someone willing to endorse you. Then I'll create my own connections, Grace countered, a strategy forming as she considered her options. I'll turn this exhibition into something more, and you won't stop me. A flicker of recognition seemed to dawn in her stepmother's eyes, perhaps a begrudging respect for the fierce spirit unfolding before her. But as quickly as it came, the dark clouds of disdain swept in again. You'll regret this, Grace, she warned, her voice low and threatening. With that, her stepmother retreated, leaving Grace standing alone in the intensity of her resolve. She felt both exhilarated and terrified, the weight of the confrontation forging a new layer of strength within her. As she returned to the canvas, each brushstroke now felt more potent, echoing the very heart of her mother's spirit. She had come too far to turn back. Each color she added became a manifestation of her unanswered questions, her unexpressed desires, and the lessons that life had bestowed upon her. Looking at her work, Grace realized this was just the beginning. The ticking clock still echoed, but now it felt like a countdown, a challenge to embrace each fleeting moment. Would her artistic voice be strong enough to transcend her stepmother's chains? The question loomed as she dipped the brush into a vibrant hue, a promise lingering in her heart. Outside, the sun began to set, casting long shadows in the attic. Grace glanced toward the door, feeling a sense of urgency. She needed allies. The gallery was only weeks away. Who could she trust to help her bring her vision to life, and could she weave together the fragments of her mother's past with her own future? The path ahead became clearer, but uncertainty remained, demanding bold choices. What potential allies lurked in the shadows, willing to join her in this artistic rebellion, and what sacrifices would she have to make? Grace spent the following days in a whirlwind of preparation, each moment heightened by the adrenaline that surged through her veins. The attic had become her sanctuary, a place where colors mingled with memories. As she stood before her canvas, she felt her mother's spirit guiding her with every stroke. With each swipe of the brush, she reclaimed not only her mother's legacy but also her own identity. Despite this newfound resolve, doubt crept in like an unwelcome visitor. Grace could almost hear her stepmother's voice echoing in her mind. Money, connections, and someone willing to endorse you. The words felt like a looming specter, reminding her of the obstacles ahead. How exactly would she navigate the competitive art world without those essential resources? She paused, staring at her canvas, its colors vibrant and alive. I'll find a way, she whispered to herself. Determination blossomed anew, pushing her to research every gallery, artist, and connection within her reach. Every early morning and late night spent alone in the attic became a foundation for her future. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Grace ventured into the bustling streets of downtown, notebook in hand. Her heart raced at the prospect of scouting potential art scenes. Glimmers of light from galleries beckoned to her like stars in a night sky. If she could just meet someone who believed in her vision, everything would fall into place. Her first stop was a small, independent gallery on a quiet street. The owner, a woman in her late 40s with a kind smile and artfully scattered curls, eyed Grace with curiosity. "You're new here," she noted, tilting her head slightly. "I'm thinking about exhibiting my work," Grace replied, barely concealing her anxiety. "It's inspired by my late mother's art." The woman's brows furrowed in thought. "Art is not just about what you see, it's about the stories behind it. If your mother's legacy resonates through your work, it might resonate with others too." Grace exhaled softly, encouraged by the woman's openness. They spoke for hours, sharing their artistic passions and discussing the gallery world's hidden intricacies. Grace listened intently, absorbing every piece of advice like a sponge. By the time they parted, the seeds of a possible mentorship were sown. The following days brought new challenges. Grace felt pulled between her burgeoning relationship with the gallery owner and the oppressive shadow of her stepmother's threats. The growing power of her conviction was matched only by the fear of backlash. Would her stepmother retaliate against her efforts? Determined not to succumb to fear, she focused on her artwork, pouring herself into every canvas. The colors spoke of her struggle, her voice finding a physical form. Gradually, she pieced together a collection that paid homage to her mother while sparking conversation about her own identity. But as excitement mounted, so did her worries about funding. The materials, the display, the logistics each seemed insurmountable. The question loomed, who would take a chance on a girl starting from scratch? Then, at the edge of despair, a revelation struck. Grace remembered the artist community she had once frequented with her mother. They had shared not only art but support, a sense of belonging. Perhaps reaching out to them could bridge the gap between her current situation and the spotlight she sought. What if they could assist her launch? She penned a heartfelt message, outlining her journey and her mother's artistic contributions, asking for support and connections. As her fingers hovered above the send button, a rush of vulnerability washed over her. Would they respond? Could she trust them? With one deep breath, she pressed send, her heart pounding against her chest. As she gazed out the window, watching city lights flicker like fireflies, Grace felt a strange sense of peace amidst the chaos. She was stepping away from her past, forging a unique identity. This was no longer just about art, it was about community, empowerment, and, ultimately, taking control of her life. Yet another message dinged in her inbox just moments later, the response from the artist community. Would it lead to the alliance she desperately yearned for, or further complicate her path? The outcome could redefine her ambitions, propelling her closer to her dreams or plunging her into darker waters. Fingers trembling, she opened the message, anticipation and dread twisting within her. The message unfurling before Grace's eyes felt like a pendulum swinging between hope and fear. The small screen lit up with a familiar name, one she hadn't thought about in years: Lydia, her mother's closest friend and a renowned artist in her own right. "Grace," it began, "I'm so glad to hear from you. Your mother always spoke of how talented you were." A warmth crept into Grace's chest, but it was quickly swallowed by self-doubt. Lydia had known her mother. Would she judge Grace's work based solely on her lineage? As she read on, the words ignited a small flame of resolve. Lydia expressed her excitement about Grace's potential and invited her to showcase her art in an upcoming local gathering, a platform where many rising artists presented their work. "We believe in nurturing fresh talent," she had written, "and your mother would want you to find your voice." Grace's heart raced. This could be the opportunity she had yearned for, the moment to validate her dedication. Yet a dark cloud of skepticism hovered above. Could she truly connect with this community? What if they didn't see her artistry the same way her mother had? The all-too-familiar echoes of her stepmother's disbelief haunted her thoughts. Was she merely a shadow of her mother, destined to fail under the weight of expectations? She took a step back, breathing in deeply. This was not only about legacy, it was about carving her own niche. A surge of courage bubbled inside her, and she responded to Lydia with renewed determination, enthusiastically confirming her participation. There it was, an anchor in the chaos, a small step that could set off a chain reaction that in the days leading up to the gathering, Grace poured her soul into her artwork. The anxiety that had once paralyzed her transformed into a fierce creative energy. Each piece reflected her journey, layers of grief, hope, and her defiance against the shadow of her past. She was no longer just painting for the approval of others, she was establishing her own identity. However, as the date approached, the ever-ominous specter of her stepmother's disapproval loomed larger. Grace's phone buzzed again one evening with a new message, this time from her stepmother, a casual inquiry about her plans for the weekend. Grace hesitated, biting her lip. Was this just friendly banter, or was her stepmother fishing for information to undermine her? Choosing to keep her art ambitions private, Grace crafted a simple reply. The moment she hit send, a wave of guilt washed over her. Was she betraying her place in the family by not sharing? But she quietly reminded herself that this was her moment to shine. Silence could be a shield just as much as it could be a barrier. Once she arrived at the gathering, the energy in the small studio overwhelmed her senses. Laughter and chatter surrounded her, a tapestry of colors and creativity filling the air. Grace set up her pieces, each brushstroke encapsulated the myriad emotions she had navigated. However, the buzz of excitement was soon punctured by a bite of anxiety. The other artists were seasoned, and she felt like an imposter among them, but just as she started to retreat into her insecurities, her gaze fell on Lydia, animatedly discussing art with other attendees. It was as if her mother was standing there, smiles mixed with pride radiating from Lydia as she introduced Grace's work to the crowd. Suddenly, the walls felt less confining, the energy around her more inviting. Encouraged, Grace took a deep breath and stepped forward, greeting people, sharing stories about her pieces and their inspiration. As they engaged, she discovered not only admiration but also warmth. She wasn't just a newcomer, she was part of a conversation that mattered. The moment felt monumental, but that creeping doubt still nagged at her thoughts. Would she be able to sustain this momentum? Would her stepmother's inevitable retaliation shatter this fragile confidence? Just then, a familiar voice broke through her internal turmoil. Lydia approached, eyes sparkling. "You have incredible talent, Grace," she said, her enthusiasm palpable. "You deserve to have your voice heard." It was the affirmation she had been searching for, and for a moment, Grace felt invincible. But as the night pressed on, she couldn't shake the sudden realization, her stepmother wouldn't simply accept Grace's success. The future remained uncertain, yet Grace was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Would the strength of her newfound community protect her against the darkness lurking at home? Only time would tell, and she had to be prepared. Something profound was unfolding, and as she connected with more artists, it became crystal clear, the stakes were higher than she'd anticipated. With her identity on the line, would she rise to the occasion, or would the echoes of her past engulf her? The next move was crucial. The morning light filtered through the window, illuminating the chaos of brushes and paint tubes scattered haphazardly across Grace's workspace. Each stroke on the canvas felt like a testament to her journey, yet she couldn't shake the solidarity of fear tightening around her chest. Lydia's words echoed in her mind, wrapping around her like an embrace. She deserved to have her voice heard. But as the shadows of her stepmother loomed in the back of her thoughts, Grace felt a prick of hesitation. What if her daring to step into the light drew out the darkness at home? The idea clawed at her, squeezing her confidence. She needed to cultivate inner strength. One successful night wouldn't be enough to shield her from the storm brewing just beyond her door. Picking up her brush, she focused on the colors swirling on her canvas. With each blend and flow, she sought to align her resolve with her creativity. In this moment, she was not just an artist, she was someone rebelling against the narrative laid out for her by her stepmother. There was power in that realization. Her essence lay not just in talent shaped by lineage, but in her raw experiences, painted with authenticity. Days passed, and the glow of the gathering still lingered in her mind. Conversations replayed like a vivid movie. She had felt a connection, a spark of creativity resonating with those who understood her struggle. But that fleeting sense of belonging was now waned by a weight of reality. Grace had an upcoming opportunity to showcase her work at a local cafe, a casual affair, but for Grace, it felt monumental. She was determined to stand her ground and prove her worth. As the day approached, Grace wrestled with conflicting emotions. Panic threatened to pull her back to her old self. Yet, beneath the swirl of anxiety, a small ember of tenacity ignited within her. Why hide in fear when she could lean into her artistry to find strength? On the night of the cafe show, she arrived fresh from a moment of preparation. Clad in a simple black dress that mirrored the void she had fought against, she commanded her entrance with purpose. The cafe buzzed with friends, families, and art enthusiasts mingling, the air thick with expectation. As she set up her pieces, Grace could feel her heart pounding against her ribcage, throbbing with the dual beats of excitement and dread. She positioned her art carefully, ensuring each canvas spoke volumes of her journey, all the raw emotions, the overcoming of darkness. Her body caught attention as people began drifting toward her corner, curious about the new artist who had arrived. They engaged her, asking questions about her inspiration. Each inquiry chipped away at the hesitance that had plagued her. She was not merely a vessel of her mother's talent, she was a creator in her own right. However, just as Grace began to find her footing, she caught sight of a figure entering, the very person from whom she had expected no support. Her heart sank as her stepmother's presence loomed over her. The tightening in her chest threatened to unravel all the recognition she had gathered. Grace, her stepmother's voice cut through the chatter, sharp and probing. "So this is what you've been hiding from us?" The room dimmed momentarily, every glance shifting toward Grace, expecting a reaction. In that moment, she faced a choice: recoil into the shadows or stand boldly in her truth. She felt the weight of the eyes upon her but steadied herself, drawing from the strength she had unearthed in her art. "I wasn't hiding," she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor of vulnerability. "I've been finding my voice." The challenge hung in the air, thick and palpable. The audience, other artists, and patrons, held their breath as the tension escalated. Would her stepmother dismiss her, belittle her? Or would Grace stand tall against the simmering judgment? And in that critical moment, Grace felt an unexpected rush of courage. She became acutely aware of her surroundings. She wasn't just an artist trying to survive any longer. She was an individual claiming her identity in a world that had tried to define her. As their gazes locked, Grace saw something shift in her stepmother's eyes, a blend of disdain and caution. But the moment of power was fleeting. The confrontation had opened the floodgates to her truth, and now she had to decide what she would do next. Would she confront her stepmother openly, risking an explosive fallout, or divert the conflict toward her art, further anchoring her identity? The choice loomed like an unfinished canvas, and Grace knew the stakes were higher than mere art displays. As the crowd's excitement continued to buzz around her, the outcome of that night hung on her decision. Would she continue to shine brightly, or retreat back into the shadows? In all its complexity, the answer awaited her next move. Would she have the strength to finally stand up for herself, or would the familiar chains pull her back? The electric atmosphere of the cafe pulsated around Grace, a world spinning smoothly while she felt suspended in a moment forever straddling fear and empowerment. With every extended hand of encouragement and every questioning gaze from the crowd, she allowed the warmth of their intrigue to pull her back to the moment. She had spoken her truth, and rather than shriveling under her stepmother's disdain, Grace found the resolve to stay. The lingering taste of defiance thrummed beneath her skin, urging her to outline her narrative boldly. Her stepmother's eyes narrowed, but Grace refused to let that sway her. Instead, she shifted her focus back to her art, the canvases standing like sentinels behind her, warriors of her narrative, each meticulously crafted from her pain, wisdom, and momentous growth. As if responding to her silent call, the paint colors became livelier in her mind, bursting with richness and meaning. She leaned closer to a canvas depicting an abstract storm, swirling with dark hues and slashes of vibrant crimson, and she felt a spark of kinship with it, a turbulent yet beautiful representation of her own existence. The crowd gradually began to engage more deeply, shifting conversations from vague pleasantries toward the stories behind each piece. As she explained their significance, Grace's voice grew stronger, fortified by the realizing weight of her creativity as a form of power. Her heart swelled with pride, and she recognized that sharing her journey painted a path not just for herself but for the others captivated by her work. Conversations unfolded, and she noticed the uninhibited laughter of those attracted to her craft. Each compliment she received reinvigorated her, reminding her of the fragile bravery she wore like armor. Yet, even amid the applause and laughter, a knot of anxiety remained, fueled by her stepmother's looming presence. This was no ordinary evening, it was emblematic of her yearning to emerge from the darkness that had long shrouded her identity. As the crowd began to draw nearer, Grace felt the shift in the atmosphere when her stepmother moved closer, now an anchor of tension threatening to warp the newfound vibrancy. "Is this really what you think will secure you in your father's absence?" Her voice sliced through the gathering warmth, now pointed and sharp. Gasps rippled through those listening, eyes darting between tactics of protection or engagement. In that moment, Grace realized she stood not at a mere crossroads but at a powerful pivot point in her life. Her soul felt the enormity of the choice ahead. She could validate her stepmother's words, shrink back and apologize for her audacity, or she could stare fear in the face, distilled by vulnerability but fortified with the strength of her experience. Drawing in a breath, a surge of clarity crystallized within her. She would not be voiceless, she would not retreat. "No," she said, meeting her stepmother's gaze, daringly unwavering. "Art is my actualization, not my validation. Whether you see it or not, I'm here, I'm real, and I'm worthy." The impact of her declaration rippled through the room, momentarily suspending time. The murmur of excitement morphed into an awe-inspired silence, filled with shock and admiration. In that moment, Grace felt herself loosen shackles of fear with every heartbeat. She knew her truth, one that was far more powerful than any disapproving glance. As the silence danced around her approach, she spotted Lydia slipping through the crowd, beaming. They locked eyes, and in that fleeting moment of connection, Grace felt understood, seen. Lydia had become part of her journey, empowering her even in the face of her most daunting challenge, but with that rush came uncertainty. Would her stepmother strike back harder now that Grace had disarmed the facade of submission? And how would she reconcile the tender threads of camaraderie with the chaos swirling at home? These questions tumbled through her mind, filling her with a mixture of fear and excitement. She felt the precarious balance of her development hinge on a knife's edge. She was venturing deeper into her self-discovery, but she had yet to derive the lessons stemming from confrontation. As the crowd erupted into applause, a roaring wave of support engulfed her, but in the back of her mind, she wondered if, perhaps, this victory could set off a chain reaction. Would her boldness finally break the threads holding her to her stepmother's constraints? Or had she unknowingly ignited a storm that could unearth deeper, darker secrets yet to be revealed? Amid her triumph, the horizon of trials and triumphs stretched ahead, foreshadowing revelations that awaited. Grace had ignited a spark. Would it illuminate her path forward or set off a conflagration that threatened everything she had cultivated? The anticipation hovered, and she took a defining step toward her destiny, bracing for the larger battle that loomed beyond this sacred space. Grace felt the adrenaline still thrumming through her veins as the applause faded, replaced by a soft chatter that seemed to buzz behind her. Each echo of appreciation felt like a proof of her existence, a reminder that she was not merely a shadow cast in her stepmother's light. She couldn't help but glance at Lydia, who was still looking at her, eyes sparkling with pride and encouragement, but instead of basking fully in her small triumph, unease coiled within her. The confrontation had felt liberating, yet it left a void where assurance should have resided. What would be the cost for her boldness? She scanned the room, trying to gauge the energy of those around her, scrutinizing their reactions as the fixation on her stepmother's piercing stare weighed heavily on her. This newfound confidence seemed tied to consequences she could scarcely foresee, and the thrill of empowerment was tinged with uncertainty. The evening wore on, and Grace darted from conversation to conversation, desperately soaking in the support like parched earth beneath unexpected rain. Yet, in each shared laughter and exchanged stories, the undercurrent of her stepmother's looming presence felt more evident. Grace could sense the shifting tides. Her stepmother was orchestrating an anxiety-laden affair behind her bemused facade. After the crowd began to disperse, it was her stepmother who finally made her move, striding towards Grace with an unsettling calm. Her smile was devoid of warmth, a mask over a brewing storm. "Impressive performance, dear," she said, practicing too hard to mask the biting edge of sarcasm. "But don't think I'll let you turn your father's absence into an excuse for self-indulgence." Grace's heart raced. This isn't self-indulgence. It's me reclaiming who I am. The words felt powerful as they escaped, striking the atmosphere like lightning. Each syllable infused with a barrage of thoughts that had been simmering beneath the surface. Yet her voice, though steady, hinted at the tremor inside, mingling courage with defiance. "By hiding behind your paints? Is that really who you want to be? A struggling artist seeking validation?" Her stepmother's tone dripped with condescending pity, and Grace can feel the stakes heightening, tightening the grip of anxiety that clawed at her. "They don't define my worth," Grace challenged, but doubt seeped in at the edges of her resolve. What did her stepmother know? How many whispers had reached her ears? Had she hidden Grace's artwork from her father, simultaneously inflating and deflating his expectations? "You don't have to be a martyr for your mother's mistakes, Grace," her stepmother continued, voice softened as if to draw her nearer, yet betraying the coiling threat within. "You owe your father more than just these idle fantasies." "What I owe him is to be authentic," Grace asserted, her resolve sharpening. "Not to decode your manipulation into something palatable." Each word pierced through layers of their past, excavating her anger as if it had always been there, simmering beneath a facade of control, but she was acutely aware of the fragility of these moments. This dialogue had indicators that reached beyond the here and now. As Grace prepared to retort, she caught sight of Lydia lingering in the background, a soft frown marring her otherwise joyful demeanor. The stark contrast of their ongoing clash illuminated the choices she faced. Should she continue to confront her stepmother or seek steady refuge in her friend's understanding? Within her subconscious, a truth flickered. It wasn't merely her stepmother who wielded power, it was Grace herself, shaping her narrative with every choice, every decision to move forward. The tempest within grew louder, battling against the ground she was poised to reclaim. In the tension-filled silence, Grace understood the deeper lesson she needed to cultivate. Vulnerability was not weakness, but rather the foundation of strength. What had rooted in fear was now blooming into a fierce, protective determination. Within these stormy shadows, she recognized her burgeoning voice, a bridge from her past tethering her to a future she still had to define. As she plastered a steady smile onto her face to counter the churning chaos inside, a question clawed at her consciousness: was she ready to confront the truth that lay beyond her stepmother's manipulations? The feeling of a potential revelation surged, embedded with incredible weight. What secret still remained shrouded that could unravel everything she knew? With that anxiety coiling again, Grace turned away from the confrontation, her heart racing toward possibilities that felt painfully close yet agonizingly distant. What consequence would her new voice bring, and what truths would resonate through the impending storm? As she grappled with the daunting thought, the path ahead was filled with uncertainty, a crossroads that could transform her destiny. Grace stepped outside for a moment, the cool night air wrapping around her like a soothing balm. A cacophony of emotions swirled inside her, making her feel dizzy as she leaned against the railing of the balcony. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, allowing the crispness to fill her lungs, grounding herself in the present moment. What had just transpired? The confrontation with her stepmother had lit a fire within her, but that fire burned with the potential to scorch as well. She opened her eyes, peering into the night sky, the maze of stars shimmering like her own ambitions, far out of reach yet beckoning her forward. What if this was the beginning of something new? It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the spell of reflection. It was a message from Lydia. "Where are you? You okay?" Grace's heart warmed at her friend's concern, feeling a mixture of gratitude and guilt. Lydia had stood as her ally, her rock, amidst the chaos, and now she felt compelled to safeguard that connection. "I'll be right there," she texted back, pushing herself off the railing and stepping back inside. The dim light of the room illuminated faces that had shifted from admiration to anxiety, and she could feel their unspoken queries whispering in her direction. Lydia approached Grace as she returned to the space, weariness etched on her brow. "You did well up there," she began, though concern laced her voice. "But how do you really feel about all of this?" Grace hesitated, searching within for the appropriate response. "I feel alive, but also scared." Her words cut deeper than I thought they would. "You stood up to her." "That's huge," Lydia said, her eyes igniting with encouragement. "Don't let her take that from you." "But what if it leads to more backlash? What if she tries to use it against me? I've never fought back before." Grace felt her vulnerability rise in a wave, and she struggled to maintain her composure. "Every battle has a cost," Lydia replied softly. "But avoiding that fight won't define who you are. You have to navigate through it. Maybe use this momentum to pursue your art more seriously. Don't let fear dictate your choices." Grace contemplated Lydia's words as she walked to the corner where her artwork was displayed. The familiar strokes of color and form reminded her of her passion, yet doubts began to creep in. What if she fell short? What if her dreams were simply illusions? "Look at these," Lydia urged, gesturing toward a vibrant canvas. "You have potential. Why not enter that competition I told you about? You've got the talent to stand out. It would be a step toward gaining independence." The mingling emotions of fear and desire swirled inside Grace like a cyclone. A competition? The idea thrilled her, yet the skepticism instilled by her stepmother crept back. Was she truly brave enough to share her art outside the safe confines of their home? "Just think about it," Lydia added, her enthusiasm infectious. "You've already taken one leap tonight. This could be another. Being vulnerable is part of growing. Showing your work is an extension of reclaiming your narrative." Grace's heart raced at the thought, wavering on the precipice of her aspirations. What if she embraced this confidence and refused to be shackled by her stepmother's disdain? What if she sought validation through her art rather than letting it be a tool for manipulation? Determination began to blossom in her chest as she nodded slowly. "You're right. I won't let her decide my worth anymore." Lydia beamed, but the thought of confrontation loomed again in Grace's mind. Was this new conviction strong enough to withstand the tide of hostility that might rise in response? It was one thing to stand tall tonight, it was another to persist in the face of her family's storm. As Grace looked back at the vibrant canvases, her anxiety started to coalesce into resolve. She was ready to confront not just her stepmother's manipulation but the very fears that had held her back for too long. The storm was coming, and while the journey ahead was laden with uncertainty, she finally felt ready to carve her own path. But just as she was about to express her decision, a deafening crash echoed from within the house, the sound ricocheting through her newfound clarity like a thunderbolt. What had happened? Looking toward the origins of the disturbance, her heart raced. The battle she had been so eager to face was about to escalate in a way she had never anticipated. Grace stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding as the sounds of chaos echoed from her family's home. The vibrant hues of her canvases were now overshadowed by an ominous certainty. This was no longer simply about her art, it was about survival. With a deep breath, she made her way back inside, steeling herself for the confrontation that lay ahead. As she rounded the corner, she could see her stepmother standing in the living room, a shattered vase at her feet, one that had been a cherished family heirloom. "Do you see what your recklessness has wrought?" Her stepmother spat, eyes blazing with fury as she directed her aggression toward Grace. "You think you can defy me and nothing will happen? You're just a little girl playing artist." The air crackled with tension, the echo of her words sliced through Grace's newfound sense of empowerment. However, in that moment, she realized that the confrontation had laid bare the darkness that had long clouded their relationship. Her stepmother had always attempted to undermine her spirit, but now, Grace recognized this moment as pivotal, a chance to stand firm, not only for herself but for the legacy of her mother. "I am done hiding," she declared, her voice steady, conviction flooding her words. "Hiding won't keep you from trying to stifle me. I should be more than a shadow in your world." Grace took a step forward, defiance resonating in her chest. Every moment she had spent painting was a step toward her liberation, and she would not allow anyone to take that from her. Her stepmother's sneer twisted into something like disbelief. "You're not worthy of this life if you can't respect what has been built for you. You think your art will support you? You're far too naive." Rather than back down, Grace pressed on, remembering the connection she had forged with other artists and the support of Lydia. "What I've learned from art is more than paint and canvas. It is where I find courage to speak, to create, and to embrace my identity. I'm not looking for your approval, I'm reclaiming my story," she insisted. The tension in the room surged like a storm. It was a moment of confrontation that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Grace knew that relinquishing the grip her stepmother had over her was integral to healing her fractured spirit. "Your words hold no power here anymore," she said, continuing with her resolve. "If anything, they've lit a fire in me that I never knew existed. I will show the world who I am and who my mother was." With that affirmation firming her sense of purpose, Grace pivoted, feeling different. She was ready to unveil her art, ready to chase her dreams with relentless vigor, ready to shake off the shadows of the past. The air shifted, releasing the weight of fear she had carried for too long. Days turned to weeks as Grace poured herself into preparing for her first exhibition. After countless nights spent in the attic, wrestling with her emotions and artistic expression, she found camaraderie among the artists she had begun to collaborate with through Lydia. Their encouraging words had become her lifeline, and her canvases transformed into vibrant testaments of her identity. The night of the exhibit arrived, pulsating with energy and possibility. It felt surreal. Each piece on display conveyed her mother's spirit mingling with her own essence, a colorful array of emotions reflecting resilience and rebirth. The gallery buzzed with admiration, and Grace stood in the center, a mix of pride and anxiety swirling within her. As the crowd moved from piece to piece, Grace overheard conversations erupting, people connecting with the narratives embedded in each work. Then someone approached her, an influential art critic with an air of authority. "Your work is striking," he said, his gaze fixed on her. "I see a unique voice here, both poignant and bold. I would love to write a piece on your journey, the legacy of your mother, and how you've embraced art." The opportunity felt like the culmination of all her efforts, a validation not just of her talent but of her identity as an artist. Grace's heart soared, the echo of all her struggles began to dissipate into harmony. In that moment, Grace realized she had completely transformed, not just into a recognized artist, but into a woman who owned her narrative, who faced adversity with determination and grace. She was no longer a girl caged by the expectations of others. She had broken free, embracing her truth with confidence and newfound clarity. As applause erupted, resonating around her like a standing ovation for her triumph, Grace finally understood what it meant to rise from the ashes. She reclaimed her identity and the profound legacy of her mother. In the end, it was not just about her artwork or the accolades she gathered, but about the relentless pursuit of self-discovery. She stepped into the light, fully present and undeniably herself, a true testament to the power of art, authenticity, and unwavering resolve. Now, as you reflect on Grace's journey, I demand you to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. This is the moment to show your love. Comment below your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting our journey together.